Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. Again, I make the apology if you're picking up the audio, not feedback, but noise from my computer. It's jolly annoying. No doubt it's annoying to you, because it is to me as well. This little investigation is proving to be quite interesting, a little bit challenging in some ways, just to get my head around it, but the use of the tabs I'm showing at the moment being placed on the top because that's the easiest for me to work on them, or where it's easiest. But there comes a question, where is the hierarchy of how you drop the plates down? And importantly, when do you rebate or rabbit, whatever you want to call it, recess, and when do you put a slot in the timber, leaving a wee bit of the material on top? I suggest this one here is right at the threshold, it being approximately, if I measure it, I would suggest it's not very thick, 4.5 millimeters or thereabouts. That is going to be troublesome in that it probably will break out. So that may well be a rebate, a recess, as is this one here. This one's rebated, approximately recessed, approximately the thickness of the tab. This one, of course, would approximately, because it changes with the different angles, you could say it would. You could think of it as 6 millimeters recess, because that was 4.5 plus 3. Anyway, you kind of get my drift. I will do it again. A little bit better this time. 7.7 millimeters. So this little tab here is only like 4.5, 4.7 millimeters thick. Not much. So should this be rebated off? The question that came up for me, and although I should have, I haven't brought them into this particular model, the use of the battens with the dihedral angles on. If that is an option for this style of dome, for me it is, at the moment, currently, maybe, then if I have got rebates all over the place, recesses, there is no good fixing, and or the head of the fixings for here have to be considered. Now the likelihood is that the batten itself can be rebated for the head of the bolt or the screw if there's any interference, but that's something that we need to have a wee bit of a think about. Currently I've only done the 3 joints. This one here showing the double assembly arrangement. It may well be that that is used on all of the intersection points, but the option is to have these as a single component joint, and we can drop that down so that the tabs become close to the neutral axis, and then things can be bolted up or whatever for that situation. That eliminates the need for recesses, because they'll be all slots. It's a question. We're up here at the very apex. Well, same thing. You could drop this down so that they come into the strut thickness or depth, and these recesses would be not an issue, and fixing of battens etc. shouldn't be an issue either. The head of the whatever fixing we've decided upon, and I suggest when it is in deeper in the recess that a bolt would be better, because then you can clamp the 2 pieces of timber on either side of the tab together to stop splitting, and that would become quite an important feature. Now if you just wait there a moment, I will draw into the screen a picture or two maybe. Okay, now this is one version. Though it's quite light. Oh, sorry, it's a bit better. It's quite a light batten. I would suggest it's possibly 2 inches or 50 mil across here, maybe a little bit less in depth. I gauged that on the proportions, and these dome nuts are quite small, of different sizes. This is very likely a 6 or 8 millimeter bolt, so I'm guessing 50 by 35, 50 by 50 if you wanted to. They would be located, as I was saying in the previous video, they're more likely that these are all placed in the center of the timber, and therefore the tops of the battens are all up and down depending on which one gets layered where. Not a problem. Quite neat in itself, more suited to the shorter strut type assembly, especially when you're looking at this, no washers underneath. I wouldn't like to load this up too much. So that's one. So I'll get rid of that. Just wait there. Now this isn't the same type, but, and this is a very, very nice assembly when you see the whole thing. It must be machine cut, laser cut, or whatever, CNC type, because it's just so neat. Anyway, here they have the, well, you can see what I was saying, the nuts on top, rather the bolt heads on top, bolted through. I believe this is a flat assembly, it's not a dome, so there's no angles here, so they can do this much more readily. The question is, why is that there? Because if this were to be a single plate, why do you need this? Got no idea. But they've got it nonetheless, so therefore there's a reason. This is a laminated timber, as we can see, and if we looked carefully we could probably count the veneers and see that yes, indeed, these all land about the same position. But interesting, very, very neat, got to say. So that's one thing. Now let me find the last one so that I'll delete that. And this is more what we're talking about here. In fact, it's exactly what we're talking about here. They've got the heavier timbers. Now this is more likely to be 50 by 75 or 50 by 100, around about what I'm using, there or thereabouts. That looks like it'll be a 12 millimeter bolt, if not it'll be a 10, depending on how you want to judge it. But it's in this sort of area that I would be using, the sizing wise. You can see a little bit of dislocation here. The plates are being pulled out of alignment slightly. Not a biggie, but nonetheless it's an issue. They have got their legs or plates close to center, so I'm assuming these struts will be pushed up and down out of geometric position. Not a problem for if you're putting a tarpaulin over it, not a problem at all. And they're very likely using a coach bolt, which means they've got a round head on this side. I'm making that as a suggestion, can't recall seeing the photo of this on the other side. And then they've got a recessed nut and washer and bolted together. Quite tidy, very tidy in fact. A little bit busy because of the nuts, but what we're talking about. So very easy to assemble. These can be slotted into place relatively easy, and the observant of you will be going, hang on a minute, David. No, they can't, because they'll interfere, and being triangulated, the last ones will be particularly tricky. Well, not if this is the last one, because you just swing it into place and okay. But if you leave the bolts out, you can actually swing the tab round if there's enough room to do so. Now in this type of assembly there's not, and this is kind of one little point. They've got them nice and neat where the timbers come up close. I've got mine a little bit further apart. There's more demand on the bracket therefore, and hence why the top assembly and bottom assembly would be a better approach, although it might be a pain in the butt, but that would take care of that issue. And if I use this as an example, with this bigger gap, and that's not a design I've put in, it was just that these struts are left over from the previous version where I used the steel hub and the metal packers. But that said, if I can just go to rotate it, I can actually move them into position independently. So that's a good, I'm going to say it's a feature. So you can move the tab into place and put the bolts in. Yay, makes for assembly a little bit more pleasurable. Will that work here? No gap, even with the 10mm packer. So the hierarchy becomes important. Do you assemble these two together, these four, this one and this one, or whatever? Because the bigger gap, these can go in later. Well, that again is a maybe, but it certainly is something to think about when you come to this sort of assembly. You don't want them too tight, or you make sure, as I said to begin with, that there is a hierarchy in this case for assembly, and you've got to be aware of what that is. More than likely, either start from the top, start from the bottom, but whatever. I had actually thought of having, say, this strut, that's the way I've got it shown, that is the last one to be assembled, and it just sits on top. The bolts can be positioned, and as I said, this one here as a strut and tab assembly can be assembled last. But the question is, and something I haven't yet had a look at, oops, sorry about that, what happens when you've got dual assemblies? How do you slot them in place? And that is a question worthy of a little bit of thought and investigation. You wouldn't want, you'd assemble this one and this one can swing into place, as can that one. Problem taken care of on that joint. Just thought of it just then. Similar rationale there. You could assemble a couple. These can be then swung into place at the last in the sequence. This one may need a little bit of forethought, or any of these ones up at these high heights, especially this one, will need that extra bit of thought. So at the moment, I don't know whether I like it enough that it would swing me away from the steel hub, etc. for the looks. But are the looks so inferior that I would forego the supposed simplicity of it? And gotta say, I'm really leaning towards having a serious thought of making this now the first dome hub assembly that I'll make, rather than the steel tube and the threaded rod and pipe assemblies. So that's taken a bit for me to get there. and it was one of the early ones I looked at. Go figure. But appreciating the designs of the different assemblies makes your rationale alter. Appreciation alter. Okay, rambly. Yes, still going to get warm today. I've already been outside and got wet with the sprinklers. So with that, I'll put it aside and again on the back burner, do a little bit more work, and then I'll come back to you in the next video with some riveting insights. Yeah, we wish. Okay, that's it. See you in the next one now. Bye.